Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning into today's broadcast. It is the Tuesday, June 9th, 2026 episode of the Marco Duray Show, the only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Time to get things rolling right away. Lots to discuss on today's program. I want to bring everyone's attention first over to Iran. We still have no negotiation moving forward with the Iranians, despite always being told we're just a few days away from peace. Sadly, that seems to be the current mantra coming from the White House. And unfortunately, the longer this war continues, certainly with the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, the worse the global economy will be. That's just the way it's going to be. It will not get any better. And what's worse is the perceptions and the favorability for President Trump will continue to sink. So this can't go on much further. I think Trump understands this. And he'll soon be, though, at a point of no return, where people are just going to be hyper-focused on this war, what's going on, especially with the pocketbooks. This will obviously be affecting everybody. So he's got to be aware of this. We're in a midterm cycle right now. He's got to understand. He's got to get things moving and reverse them quicker, not later. Now, this is already, but clearly one of the biggest blunders in American history by far. Of all the reckless and stupid decisions that one person could make, we try to perform a decapitation strike on Iran for regime change because Netanyahu told him to strike at a particular time. I mean, this has been very well documented, folks, by people like Marco Rubio. Unfortunately for him, letting the cat out of the bag when he wasn't supposed to. Peter Doocy said this on Jesse Waters' prime time. They unearthed this information that, it was the Israelis that said we're going in, and we followed right behind him. Which excludes any type of imminent threat. This was just an opportune moment they believed that would take out the Iranian government. We would then replace it with whatever puppet president or whatever puppet leader we chose, and that everything would be fine, everyone would be happy about this. But the opposite actually occurred. We underestimated the Iranians. The Israelis underestimated the Iranians. And in return, strengthening the Iranian people with their government after this. Again, despite what you've been told. And now we are in a much weaker position to make a good deal with the Iranians because they aren't defeated. They see the strength of what they have done right now. And by the way, this is clearly upsetting President Trump. He believed, and by the way, I can't even blame him. He was told the regime would fall apart in 3 to 5 days. He'd be the first president to take on the Iranians after so many years. And you would have won. A great military victory to be had. Everyone would love you for it, but the exact opposite happened. And now we have the reaction of the American people. Roughly 60% are not buying into this war. They don't want this war. They're not pleased with the way the economy is moving. And let's remember, President Trump and J.D. Vance both ran as peace candidates. This is something that's kind of been coming into the media waves as of late. But now they're trying to say, no, we didn't say that. We didn't say no new wars. This isn't a new war. No, this is just an excursion. This is just a little conflict going on. Hey, it's only a couple months. It's not a forever war, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I seem to think that, again, starting wars for no reason, spending roughly, $30 billion at the bare minimum. I don't think many people would be very happy about this. Let's take a listen to clip 1 where President Trump, by the way, you got to ask yourself the question, what changed? What changed from the campaign to right now, the way that we are talking about things? Take a listen to clip 1. Here we go.
What changed? Because you insisted no new wars.
First of all, I didn't guarantee no war. Why would I have built the strongest military in the world? I built our military. I inherited a terrible military. We had no equipment. We had nothing. I built a tremendous military. Biden gave a lot of it away, but it's still a relatively small portion compared to what I built.
But you said it over and over again, Mr.
Why would
President?
I build a military? Now, I didn't want to use this, but I'm doing you and everybody else a big favor.
And I'm proud to be the first president in decades who started no new wars. That's very good. No new wars. Instead, I brought our troops back home. No new wars.
As Donald Trump campaigned for his second term, a promise.
No new wars. They said his personality will create wars. I said, no, my personality is going to keep us out of wars. Look at him, listen to him. He's going to start a war. Listen to his rhetoric. They thought I was going to start a war. Let me tell you something. I'm going to stop World War III.
And at his inauguration, he vowed to keep his promise.
We will measure our success not only by the battles we win, but also by the wars that we end, and perhaps most importantly, the wars we never get into. My proudest legacy will be that of a peacemaker and unifier. That's what I want to be, a peacemaker and a unifier.
So that's clearly a different contrast, certainly from his first term as president. Didn't start any new wars. Again, running as a peace candidate in 2024. We all bought into it. We all wanted it. I don't know anyone on the Republican side that said, yes, we need new wars in 2025, 2026. So again, he didn't run in saying that, no, we're simply not going to have any new wars. No, I didn't say that. I'm sorry, what? Now, again, I don't know who put that montage together, but I found it. I thought you'd all would find it interesting. But clearly they ran and said, listen, if you vote for Kamala Harris, and by the way, I do believe this true, that she would have probably escalated the conflict in Ukraine, absolutely 100%. We thankfully pulled ourselves out of that one, but we got ourselves into other conflicts. Bombing the Houthis, which we did not defeat. Now look where we are with Iran. Now, this has got to stop, folks. This can't go on for much longer. There's no way out for this. There's two routes he can go. And by the way, he alluded to in the beginning of this clip, I'm doing this to save us, right? That's what he alluded to. We've got to go after Iran because, look, they've got this ability to have a nuclear weapon, but we get conflicting information. 1 minute we've bombed the nuclear dust. There's no access to it. We've got to go down and extract it from the earth. They're going to let us come in and take it. We'll take it, and that'll be the end of it. Well, again, if the Iranians have no access to this nuclear dust, right, the highly enriched uranium, the hexafluoride, then what's the imminent threat then? How could they be building a bomb if the enriched uranium is buried somewhere underground in these bases of which we have said we have destroyed? We have obliterated them, right? That was the terminology used. So there's two sides of what's going on here. I tend to believe really none of it. I don't believe we've destroyed all their uranium. I don't believe that. I believe they have control of it. I believe they probably moved it before the attacks took place. But the question is, where was the imminent threat that we had to go in and attack? Again, that's what the War Powers Resolution describes. There has to be some sort of imminent threat in order for the president to take action. Which, again, I'm not opposed to that happening if there is a truly imminent threat. I don't believe there is one here. How is there an imminent threat when you're in negotiations and you're planning to meet with the other party in just a few days? Where's the imminent threat there? In other words, where's the information that Iran was going to attack the United States with ballistic missiles, nuclear weapons, that the president just had to act? 2 days after their last meeting, you had Marco Rubio planning a trip to go to Israel, again, to work on this as Secretary of State. Or maybe he was National Security Advisor, or maybe he was going to DJ the event. I don't know. But why would Rubio make that announcement? Oh, I'm going to Israel on Monday. The same day these meetings are taking place to work on negotiations with the Iranians. Why would you continue to negotiate if you are going to be attacked by that country? You wouldn't. And by the way, we saw the same thing happen back in June of 2025, just a year ago. The Iranians were coming to the table. They said, Ali Shamkhani, yep, the one that the Israelis killed in their wave of strikes, was going to give us everything that we wanted. An agreement to, again, no nuclear weapons program. They were going to agree to that. Not enriching uranium past 3.76%. And they were going to continue to allow the weapons inspectors by the United States to come into their nuclear facilities to inspect and make sure there was no creation of this nuclear program. Now, this is a pretty good deal. It largely mirrors the JCPOA that Trump miraculously took us out of and didn't replace it with anything. Let's just, again, be very clear about this. If Iran is full of crazy mullahs and crazy people that hate the United States, hate Israel, hate the West, want to take us out and destroy us, why would you take us out of the negotiation, the legal binding negotiation, by the way, in 2018 and replace it with absolutely nothing? Now, again, the JCPOA would have gone for 10 years, so that would have given us until last year time to negotiate a new deal. But you have to ask yourself the question, if the Iranians are this crazy, why would you take out the one binding contract with them that would prevent them from doing that, holding them accountable? Doesn't make any sense, folks. I mean, again, if you want to replace it with something, that's something totally different. Trump ripped up the agreement and then did absolutely nothing to salvage it. And basically, you left them to their own devices. So then they can enrich to whatever the hell really they want to. Again, anything over 90%, but really they can enrich from 0 to 90%, and that would be it. So enriching to 60%, again, while it looks intimidating, it shows that, yes, they can enrich to a certain level. And again, I have no doubt that the Iranians have that capability. I'm sure they do. But they had no evidence that they were even going beyond that 60% enriched uranium level. So again, I ask you, where is the evidence? Where is the intel that shows, hey, they're a couple weeks away from building this, 10 to 11 different bombs? There's no evidence whatsoever. Certainly I haven't seen it. Tulsi Gabbard hasn't seen it. Joe Kent hasn't seen it. So I ask you the question, where is this imminent threat that this war needed to begin? Nowhere to be found. And on that note, folks, I want to move us over to the Wall Street Journal. Let's move on. We have other interesting information coming out of the Middle East right now. A U.S. drone boat found and rescued 2 crew members of an American Apache helicopter that crashed near the Strait of Hormuz on Monday evening. And in the first of its kind operation at sea, is what the military has reported now, that this unmanned surface vessel was able to locate the crew, who had spent roughly 2 hours in the waters off the coast of Oman, brought them to shore, and rescued them. Now, again, speaking highly of our military, I mean, this is a great achievement right now. Now, the military is investigating whether the Apache was shot down by Iranian forces or if there was some type of mechanical malfunction causing it to crash. But the rescue really does mark an operational first for these types of vessels. We have to think, too. This is a great setup for our military because if there's, let's say, inclement weather, or let's say it's something like you don't want to go behind enemy lines with another team or another crew, you have the ability to send in these types of drone boats now that can locate people where they are, I'm sure using GPS or some other tracking device, rescue them, and then bring them to safety. And thankfully, this took place and that these 2 were found and, of course, rescued. So I'm very, at least, happy about that. Now, we haven't been given any information aside from the fact that they received medical care and they're in stable condition after receiving some follow-up on support from the Americans on land. But we have no idea why they were in this mission. What were they doing? So the CENTCOM has not told us exactly what they were doing. And it's probably likely they were doing some type of recon in the area, I'm guessing. Certainly that seems to be the most plausible thing as to maybe what's going on coming out of the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, again, our vessels are roughly 600 miles away from the opening of the Strait of Hormuz. So we're quite a bit away. Now, these planes were obviously much closer, being right off the coast of Oman. So certainly they were much, much closer to the region. I'm guessing they were running recon, if I had to make a guess here. But this seems to be the way that the military is moving. By the way, this is a good sign that, hey, AI does have some good purposes. I mean, when you think about it, you don't have to send a whole team in there. You could send one of these drone boats. If that fails, you could send another one in to help rescue them. And you have to pray, of course, that international law stands and that the other party, other country, and their territorial waters allows us to pick them up, as, again, the rules of war tells us. But, this is in the height of this conflict with Iran. We've seen kind of the back and forth going on as of late. So I don't know if Iran would have attacked this Apache helicopter. We don't have the information yet. I pray that's not taking place. They're attacking us now. But the U.S. also is still enforcing this naval blockade. So it does beg the question, if they saw an American helicopter, would they attack it? That is possible. Only time will tell if they do come out with a report and tell us exactly what took the helicopter down. But currently conducting patrols seems to be the likely threat maybe to the Iranians or this crucial waterway. Maybe that's what set it off. We don't know. Hopefully we find out at some point. But this highlights something else that's taking place. This is now one of the, I think it's like, I don't even know how many helicopters that we've had destroyed thus far. Certainly there's been a lot, though. Again, the loss of helicopter lengthens the list now of U.S. aircraft destroyed by accidents or enemy fire with the war with Iran. So we've had 4 F-15E Strike Eagles. These are jet fighters. They've been crashed. 3 of which were downed by friendly fire over Kuwait. So that wasn't the Iranians. That was our own doing. And one that was downed in Iran. It resulted in a dramatic rescue mission of its 2 pilots. That was the one that I was questioning because I was saying to myself, why would this plane be in the region? This jet fighter be in the region? Probably because they were looking over Isfahan, which again was close to where the plane landed and was downed. Probably they went in and said, we got to go pick up this guy now because, again, he's a high-ranking official in the U.S. government. We got to go rescue him. I'm assuming that's what was taking place at that particular time when the plane crashed and, of course, 2 of its pilots were missing. Thankfully, both, again, were rescued. So there's that. And then we had an A-10 Thunderbolt, again, during the same exact mission. That all was taking place around the same time. Yep. So that one went down. They had to go out and extract them. And then separately, you had 2 KC. These are the refueling planes. KC-135 that went down in March in Iraq, killing 6 crew members. 5 other KC-135s were struck and damaged while parked in the base in Saudi Arabia. Yeah, so we've got a lot, folks. Yeah, we got a lot. It says here, the Congressional Research Service listed 42 fixed-wing or rotary wing aircrafts, including drones, that were reportedly lost or damaged in the Iran war that began on February 28th. So we've got a lot, folks. A lot of damage to our aircrafts, certainly our helicopters. Now, the Pentagon's comptroller testified to Congress of the cost of the military operations in the war had risen to about $29 billion. I think that is a low number. Let me tell you why. Just these planes alone cost millions of dollars. You have to talk about keeping a crew fed, and again, these ships, these naval vessels, these warships maintained and up and running. And they've been parked there for 100 days now. So you have to ask yourself the question, how much does this cost to keep this many vessels in the region, this many troops in the region? We know we've sent Marines into the region. How much money will that cost to just have that take place without even any war? Think about all the missiles we've launched into Iran. This is definitely costing, and by the way, the bases that have been destroyed in the region. In Kuwait, in Saudi Arabia, in Qatar, Bahrain, the UAE, all these bases that have been destroyed. I've been told that just the bases alone will cost us about $100 billion just to replace them. That's a lot of money, folks. So this war is costing us definitely a lot more than $29 billion. And I would say probably the day-to-day operations of what I just discussed with you, probably $1 to $2 billion every single day, just having our presence in that region. And again, we know many vessels have since come into the region to create this naval blockade. So I think that's the low end of this. Certainly, I would have to say, probably cost us, well into the, $150 billion at least. And what have we gotten in return for this? A wrecked economy, global turmoil, loss of fertilizer, loss of oil, loss of liquefied natural gas, helium, aluminum, all things that are crucial to our economy, folks. And while our economy isn't struggling like that of Europe's or Asia's right now, it is still struggling. We're seeing that in our GDP reports, again, coming out from Q1. So, again, folks, I wish I had better news to report on this. Again, I'm very happy that these 2 pilots were rescued, of course. But it's showing that, again, things are continuing to escalate. Why do we have a helicopter flying this close to the Strait of Hormuz? What's going on? What are we planning to do in the near future? Or are we really planning on negotiations? Sometimes we say we're in negotiations, then something really bad happens. Again, look no further than last June. Look no further than the end of the end of February this year. So all these things continue to escalate, folks, and they seem to never get any better, unfortunately. Now, I will say this, too, that, again, since the attacks between Iran and Israel seem to have put to a halt, military at least for the time being, even though we've since had some conflict and tensions in the region, it seems, though, I do believe that Netanyahu will continue to escalate things. I do believe that. And the Iranians will react in kind. Now, we've been told, of course, well, the Iranians have attacked Israel. Israel needs to defend itself now. What Israel needs to do, Israel needs to get out of Lebanon and stop invading Lebanon and stop bombing Lebanon. If that takes place, you have Hezbollah and you have the Iranians that will cease to act on that. So why can't we get this going? Why can't Trump negotiate this? Where is the art of the deal, folks? This is what we want. Let's get the Israelis to stop this. Stop talking about self-defense when you've gone in and bombed a country. And by the way, the Lebanese Health Ministry now has reported over 3,600 deaths since March, since these invasions took place after the attacks on Iran. 3,600 Lebanese killed, folks. This has got to stop. You know, we could say self-defense all day long. It means nothing if you're purposely going into a country or purposely bombing the suburbs of Beirut and killing civilians. We know 2 people were killed in these attacks just the other day. We know they've killed Lebanese soldiers. So it goes well beyond Hezbollah. Okay, folks, this war is not with Hezbollah. This war is extracting land from the Lebanese, particularly south of the Litani River, of where the Israelis are now telling about 1 million Lebanese never to return to your homes. This goes well beyond self-defense, folks. And again, if you can't see that, I can't help you out with that. But that's the truth of the matter. And by the way, again, civilians have been killed primarily in these attacks. We're seeing Christians killed in these attacks. No one's saying a damn thing about it. But the Iranians have said specifically, okay, if this attack continues on, if Israel still invades into Lebanon and they continue to bomb, we will react in kind now. This is the game we will play now. And I think the Israelis, I think the United States were, again, underestimating the Iranians and what they could really do. We know that Israel struck inside of Iran at the locations of where these missiles were launched from. And then about a couple hours later, another wave of missiles. Again, I believe there were roughly 3 that came from the Iranians between June 8th and June 9th into Israel, into northern Israel. And they came from the exact same location. So, folks, you know, it seems the Iranians at least know how to maneuver their ballistic missile program. And again, they seem to be very content with where they are in this war. They're not coming to the table. They're not saying, we definitely need to make a deal. They're not saying that. They're not saying it because they feel they are winning this conflict. Now, I want to move over, before we end this discussion, I want to play you 2 clips. One is from Prime Minister Netanyahu, speaking just recently, speaking about how a prime minister needs to speak to the United States. And I want you to tell me what you think about this right afterwards. Let's listen.
A prime minister in Israel must have one specific, essential ability. Just one single ability. And if he lacks this fundamental quality, then he simply cannot be here in this position. He needs to be able to say one word to the President of the United States, and that word is no. No.
No. No. Okay, so there's Netanyahu's position. If Trump tells you to bring it down, stop invading, bring it to a halt, you just say no. And we know his party, the Likud party, they're saying the exact same thing, by the way. They're saying it, Ben Gvir said this just recently. It's time to say no. We have to tell Trump, no, this is what we're doing. This is the goal of Greater Israel, which again, you're not hearing on the mainstream media at all, unfortunately for you. Again, that's why you listen to my show. I'm telling you what's going on. But I think the bigger thing is, who is in control right now? Is it Netanyahu or is it Trump? Trump tells us, we see this in the media now, Trump is the one that calls the shots. So then what's the problem? Why is Israel still invading? Don't give me this self-defense nonsense when they invade first and they start bombing first. Then Hezbollah, Iran respond. They say, look what's going on. Well, you got to defend yourself. Again, Trump came out and said that. This is not self-defense. Israel attacked first, so it's not self-defense. It's offense. Let's be very clear about this. But more so, I got this from Danny Davis and his podcast called Deep Dive. Very great podcast, too, by the way. And he played an Iranian official just the other day. His name is Moshin Razai. I believe that's how you say his name. And he has a message for President Trump, and I think everybody here listening would agree with this. And which direction Trump needs to take this conflict. Let's listen.
Mr. Trump must make decisions independently of Israel. He must give what is the rights of the Iranian people and stop the blockade. Release our frozen assets. And this can be a new horizon for the future of Iran and America. Therefore, Trump must put aside his personal interests and think about the interests of the American people. If Trump has the courage, many issues will be resolved in the future.
I think he's absolutely right. Prioritize the United States. Focus on the United States. Focus on ending this conflict. Now, again, I know Trump wants to make a better deal than the JCPOA. I don't think he's going to get it. Again, I'm trying to be honest with you. I don't believe he's going to get something much different than a JCPOA-like deal with the Iranians at this point. And he's got to show some leverage with the Iranians, which he has come out and denied. Again, I don't know how long that's going to hold for. If he doesn't come to the table with them, if he doesn't come out and say, listen, we've got to stop this, BB. It's no more. We've got to stop. So there's two things he can do. He can either make the deal with the Iranians, or he can pull out of the region and leave it as is, and let the Israelis, I guess, handle it how they will. I guess signal to the Iranians, hey, the United States is leaving. We'll come to the table and make a deal some other time. I don't believe that he's going to do that, because then he'll be seen as weak. And then everyone will ask themselves, well, what was the point of this conflict then? You know, we've bombed them ad nauseum. We've lowered our stockpiles of our missiles. God knows what we give to the Israelis. We've lost 14 service members. We spent, again, well over $100 billion on this conflict. We've lost over at least $100 billion just in our bases alone, not to even configure in the amount of money just to spend on the operations themselves. But just sitting there, we're costing $1 to $2 billion per day on average. So the question is, then what was this for then? Did we stop the imminent threat? Because again, we didn't bomb anything brand new right now, because we're asking them for the enriched uranium, which they're not giving us. Nor will they. They've come out and said this. Right now, they will not give us any enriched uranium. And again, they're very clear. The Iranians, they have said specifically, to get us to the table to negotiate anything nuclear, you've got to do a couple things. You've got to give us our frozen assets back to us, the $24 billion of which we want back. That is their money. It's not the U.S. money, folks. It's their money. This is money given to the United States prior to the 1979 revolution. They want that money back. They want the naval blockade to be gone. They want sanction relief. They want the sanctions lifted on their economy because, again, it's crushing their economy in many cases. So they want to see good faith by the United States so that the U.S. says, here's your money back. We're moving our naval blockade, that's not really effective anyways, out of the region. We're moving it out. It's gone. It's not there anymore. We're not stopping ships. And we will work in Congress. Again, this has to be Congress doing this as well. We will lift these sanctions on Iranian oil and exports. Now, will that happen? Probably not. Probably not. I have to tell you that. And by the way, the fourth and most important part, probably, which you all know by now, is that Israel has got to get out of Lebanon and in Gaza. There can be no more killings. Again, we know this to be true, that the Israelis have violated their ceasefires, again, with both countries, by the way. And so the Iranians have said, listen, this is on the table too. This is part of the negotiation. Israel stops bombing in Gaza and in Lebanon, and then we can talk about the nuclear deal now. So there's got to be something from the United States to show that there's at least some good faith with this. And I told you before, I believe that the Iranians will come forth and say, listen, we need to have this ratified by your Congress. It's got to go through the Senate. It's got to be a real peace treaty. in ink, signed off by the president, and of course voted on by the Congress. Moving forward, we just can't trust your word anymore. And tell you the truth, I don't blame them. And I say this to you as a American-loving conservative. Trump has done so much to destroy trust in other countries. Again, I feel Putin feels the same way about this. Probably Xi feels the same way about this. Trump cannot be trusted. Look what he has done. Twice during negotiations, he has bombed this country that allegedly is so close to having a nuclear weapon. So the question begs, where does this go moving forward? Will it get worse? I seem to think so. Why are we flying Apache helicopters right next to the Strait of Hormuz? What is going on there? What are we going to try to do with that? What's the purpose of that? There's got to be something for that. You're not just going to fly a plane over that, so close to the Iranian shoreline. So I tend to think that things will get worse much quicker than we expect. But as I told you before, the pain at home, right? We're always told, well, short-term pain, long-term gain. I'm doing this for the United States. I'd rather the gas prices be up for a little bit, and then, of course, we have no threat from Iran. Simply not based on any reality. Not by a long shot. The Iranians will take control of the Strait of Hormuz. They will collect their fees from that. That's probably another addendum to their list of things. Probably not a top priority, but they are making it well known that they will control the Strait moving forward. That's just going to be the way it is. And the U.S. can't militarily open it. They can't do that. They won't do that. And if we could have, we would have. So again, I want to be very clear about all this. The Iranians are the ones right now that are in the driver's seat. And we're in the backseat trying to tell them where to go. It just simply is not going to work, folks. And again, I have no pleasure telling you that, but that's the reality of the situation. And I'm not going to lie to you and just carry water for the Trump administration. I'm not going to do that. I'll tell you how it is. That's the way it is right now. And also the way it is, folks, again, sadly enough, let's move on to this other development now coming out of ZeroHedge. It says Trump's economic shield cracks as gas prices in Iran standoff threaten midterm fortunes. Again, I've been telling you this. He's got to start prioritizing the election coming up. If he loses the House and the Senate, too, which, again, both are in range for the Democrats, God knows how, but that's just the way it is. People are fed up with the way things are moving forward. And Trump needs to understand he can't just rely on these MAGA sycophants who, no matter what he says or does, will be there drooling in support of him. Just isn't going to work. You have to get independents and some reasonably minded Democrats alike to win these elections. You have to. That's how he won in 2024. And he got a bulk of independent voters. Certainly got a lot of young voters who are, again, right now, are not happy with the way things are moving forward. You know, I almost don't want to bring this up, but I have to, because I feel this is a very big part of it, too. Charlie Kirk was a very big part of that. The youth vote, not the youth vote, of course, but the younger Americans vote, the Gen Zers, if you will. He was a big part of getting those college-age students out to vote for President Trump. What he did was phenomenal, by the way. But he was a very big part of that. Both what he did with TPUSA and, of course, his radio show as well. But he was a big, prominent voice for those younger voters. And sadly, Charlie is not there anymore. And again, you can't replace somebody like a Charlie. Just, you can't do it. It just simply isn't going to happen. You can have other people go to campuses and speak. I'm not saying that. But you're not going to get that same effect that Charlie had. The base that he built up, the support that he got on college campuses, I mean, it grew phenomenally and exponentially over the many years in which he did that. I think he began in 2012. I mean, again, the 13 years he was doing it was remarkable, that the support that he got on college campuses, the conversations he had, the discourse, and the debates that he had. You can't beat that right now. You're not going to have that type of draw for all students on campus. So the question begs, who's going to speak to these kids on campus? The college professors? The college professors aren't going to tell them to go vote for Trump or the Republicans in this cycle, or why. But furthermore, Trump has to, again, give them a reason. And these candidates have to give them a reason as to, why should I continue to vote for you right now? What are you doing for us? And by the way, one of the key focal points of Trump was that he brought the gas prices down. That is completely washed away. They're up, over $1.50 right now on average across the country right now? Up 56%. Oh, I know it's gone down, 10 cents, 20 cents here and there. It's exactly the same where I am. So if it's gone down where you are, God bless you. But you've got to give people a reason to vote for you. And voters are feeling the pain. You have high gasoline prices right now. Again, fueled again by this war that people are not going to simply forget. And people will remember that when they go to the polls. That's why I said the sooner he gets out, the better this is. He can declare victory all he wants. I could care less. Declare victory. Say, we're moving out of the region. Our CIA has determined. We've destroyed all the enriched uranium. There is no more threat. See, folks, I saved your butts. Say, I could care less. It's a lie, but he could say that. Anything to get us out of this region, and again, to further work with the Iranian government later and come to a deal. Okay, fine, do that. Great. But Trump's approval ratings have fallen near the lowest point of either of his presidential terms right now. This is what's shocking. And by the way, I take these polls with a grain of salt, really. But you're not seeing that same support. You're seeing a lot of people being miffed about what's going on. By the way, you're seeing sharp declines in approval over the economy. Again, one of his strongest political defenses was the economy in his first term. Again, that's washed away. And again, most people vote on how the economy is doing. Not all, but most people do. They look at their checkbook. They look at their bank accounts. They look at their job security, things like that. Now you're seeing public frustration over affordability. Again, a concern especially, again, among that group I just told you about. The Gen Zers and the millennials, which I'm a part of, by the way, he's not eased any of this. So we've got to ask ourselves the question, what is he selling to us to keep the Republicans in office? How do you do that? By the way, I'm not saying the Democrats are offering anything better. We know they're not going to do a damn thing, too. But if you're a young, impressionable person and you say, well, listen, I'm just going to sit at home, I'm not going to vote, then you are aiding and abetting what the Democrats are trying to do. This is the problem. And while Trump can tout tax refunds being delivered, under last year's legislation, that's simply drying up. It's going away. When you're seeing inflation close to 4% right now, year over year, again, you're paying 4% more now than you were last year for the same things you buy. People are going to, they say to themselves, well, wait a minute, I got a 2% raise from last year, 3% raise, but now I'm paying 4% more. So, I'm losing ground here. I'm losing purchasing power. The hidden tax that Milton Friedman always talked about. And again, as predicted, if gas is still north of $4 by Labor Day, everybody in town knows that's trouble for the incumbent party. I mean, that's just the way it's going to work out. So he's got to turn this around very quickly, I think. He's got to bring food prices down. And by the way, we might not have to worry about that because we don't get the proper fertilizer amount in the United States because, again, 35% of the world urea, nitrogen coming out of the Persian Gulf is simply not coming out of the Persian Gulf right now. And like Colonel Douglas McGregor says, what you don't plant today is not going to be there in 6 months. So if you like, your walnuts coming out of California and they're not being grown today, guess what's going to happen 6 months from now in December? You're not going to have any walnuts at the store. You're not going to have any corn or cashews or pears or oranges, whatever it may be, doesn't matter. But this is not going to be there in 6 months, folks, because a lot of farmers are going bankrupt right now. They can't afford the fertilizer, or they're simply just reducing their crop, or they're paying more for it, which is why you're seeing the producer price index beginning to go up. So again, I say this to you because I feel the economy is getting worse, not better. And another indication of this, and by the way, I've told you this comes from Bloomberg right now. Treasury market is telling Kevin Warsh rates need to be higher. This is really problematic for a couple reasons. Number one, if we start going above the 5% mark on all this, this is going to be very bad for the economy overall. We're already seeing that in the 30-year bond yields. If the rates continue to go up, and I believe they are, you're going to have problems, especially with the interest rates, again, going up. It's going to be more difficult to borrow money. It's going to be detrimental to our economy overall. So we have yields now on policy-sensitive U.S. 2-year notes have now surged to their highest level in more than a year after a trove of economic data led traders to a price in at least 1/4 point rate hike as soon as October. Now, at around 4.15%, the 2-year yield trades well above the Fed's current policy band of 3.5 to 3.75%. Again, this is where we are right now. So let me explain this to you. If inflation is 4%, you need to raise your interest rates to about 5% to kind of offshoot that to try to bring that rate down. This is the problem right now. We're sitting at just around the 4% mark right now. Some economists are estimating 4.2% will be the overall for this year. It may be higher. I'm not saying it can't be. Things can go very south very quickly, especially with the supply chain issues we're going to be seeing with oil, liquefied natural gas, the helium, the aluminum, the fertilizer, the urea, the nitrogen, and what have you. This can be very bad for us. And so if we start raising rates right now, it's going to be detrimental to the overall economy. It's going to cause a lot of problems, folks. And I say this to you to prepare you so you understand what's going on, but things look like they're getting worse. Certainly not any better. Trump, I believe, originally wanted Warsh to come in and start dropping the rates, but we're seeing inflation too high. We're not hitting our 2% mark. It's going in the wrong direction. It's going towards 4%. It's going to go over 4% very soon, I do believe. And as a result, this is economics, folks. You just can't say, well, we're going to drop our rates right now. It's not going to work. Simply not going to work. And by the way, once you have those higher interest rates, it's more difficult to borrow, less people borrowing money, less money moving around in the economy, folks. That's going to cause a contraction, and things are going to get much worse. I told you, get ready for dragflation. That means high inflationary numbers and low economic output. That means low GDP, which we already saw revised in Q1. Now, we can have good job report numbers. I was happy to see it on Friday's show, 172,000 jobs created in May. Okay, well, the majority of them were hospitality and leisure jobs or healthcare jobs. Again, not always paying very good pricing. Not always good wages. That's just the truth of the matter. Now, we did gain some 7,000 manufacturing jobs, but that's simply not enough as to where it needs to be. It needs to be much, much higher than that. And that's what we should have been focusing on day one, on January 20th, 2025. That should be the first thing we focus on, the economy. And Trump's not a dummy when it comes to the economy. He understands how things work. But he's hyper-focused on this foreign policy disaster that we find ourselves in now, and it's affecting his domestic policy as well. And people aren't having it. And that's obviously very unfortunate because we wanted him to turn things around for us. Now, again, in some cases he did. Again, the oil prices came down. That was great. But we're going to see those starting to go up because, again, the supply chain is just simply not going to keep up with the demand. And again, when you have low supply of something and the same demand, those prices have got to go up. And you're going to see those prices go up. Right now, the prices have just reacted to the effect of the war, not the supply chain issues of the war. That is coming very soon. And once you see Brent crude go up, West Texas Intermediate, Urbane crude, Dubai crude, Urals, again, they're all going up. And again, this is all sold on a global market. It's not just in the United States. So we got to be aware of this. Just because we're maybe energy independent. I heard Doug Burgum on, whose show was it this morning? Michael Del Giordo, I believe. Yeah. Saying, hey, look, we produce so much oil. He's not wrong. But it's sold on a global market. You've got to understand this. Because we could produce all the oil in the world. You're still paying it on a global scale. That's what you have to understand. And by the way, we still get oil imported to the United States, particularly California too, by the way. That's why their prices are skyrocketing. Because they get so much oil now abroad because so many oil companies have left the country, these refineries, sadly enough. No shock there. I want to go over now to another topic. This one is more of a free speech topic I want to talk with you about. And again, this relates to President Trump. This comes from Newsweek. And I want you to tell me what you think about this. There's now going to be a federal lawsuit now that's being filed on Saturday to halt the upcoming UFC fight called UFC Freedom 250 now. And the plaintiffs now argue that the unprecedented event, timed to coincide with President Trump's 80th birthday on Sunday, and as part of a celebration for the nation's 250th anniversary, violates federal law and improperly commercializes the public land. So what's going on here now? Now, we've heard about this UFC fight at the White House for some time. Many people were very happy and excited about this. I don't blame them, too, by the way. I think it'd be cool to fight at the South Lawn and have an event there. But what the Trump administration has done is actually, again, it's typical Trump right now. They want to use the White House property, the South Lawn, to sell VIP tickets. Forget this. $1 million or $1.5 million. And then forcing the people in the audience to purchase a Paramount Plus membership, which, of course, Larry Ellison's son, Larry Ellison of Oracle, right? Who now owns TikTok, right? Starts to run CBS, starts to run this and that, right? They want to get a Paramount Plus and all this nonsense. I think they want to get Warner Brothers too, if I'm not mistaken. And again, it's all people buying up this company, that company. Anyways, I want to get everyone in the audience that's there to purchase a Paramount Plus membership for God knows how much, $10, $15, $20, who knows. But the reason for the lawsuit is that it's illegal to actually have this event at the White House space because it's considered a national parkland. And for any for-profit event, to do so on your own is illegal. You have to, again, get a permit to do this. Now, unless a permit is granted through the National Mall and, of course, Memorial Park Office of the Permit Management, which clearly this event was obviously didn't follow through because there is no event on record. I checked. So what they're trying to do now is say that what's happening is illegal and they can try to halt this. Now, I don't know if they can issue an emergency regulation or permit for this. I don't know if they will try to do that. But it looks like the National Park Service would be the one to regulate this, any fees and whatnot. So I think they would probably come in and say, yeah, you can't charge $1 million for a seat at the White House. You're just not going to do that. They're the ones that have to set all the prices. Again, they're the ones that put up, for example, a bond for the security measures. They would hire the police cost and all that nonsense. But again, there's no record of Trump requesting or filing for the required permit, so I don't know if this will go through. I'm not sure. Again, I have to laugh about this because it's just so ridiculous in and of itself. Again, they try to tie this to the 250th anniversary of our founding, which is great. But in reality, it's Trump's birthday, so I think we got to wait a month for that part to happen too. But we'll see what happens. But, one of the things that struck me too about this, they actually did. They prevented 2 UFC fighters, very talented fighters too, by the way. Sam Strickland, one of them, and Bryce Mitchell, another. And they banned them from the attendance in the event due to remarks they made about the state of Israel. Now, Sam Strickland, again, made a comment. It's a benign criticism of Israel, particularly pertaining to the war in Iran, and he said things about the Epstein files, but he said things like he doesn't want to see any young people dying in this war. Something like that. Something, again, didn't bring up Israel again. But they're saying he's just not welcome to come to the event now, which is so stupid. You just want to fight. Bryce Mitchell, another prominent figure in the UFC, again, stands for something like freedom of speech. And I want to read you a quote of his, though, because, again, this just shows you who these two are. They're ardent patriots. They were ardent Trump supporters. And now they're being told because you've criticized the state of Israel, you can't come to this event now. On our 250th anniversary, too, by the way. Let that sink into you. How would the founders react to something like this? You can't criticize Britain? If you criticize Britain, you can't come to the White House now. Ridiculous in and of itself. But here's what he said. He said, freedom of speech is what makes America great. When you can't criticize a foreign nation, that's the only nation, he's referring to Israel, of course, you're not allowed to criticize. So not allowing 2 standout and very patriotic fighters of the UFC due to comments over a foreign nation? I mean, folks, I don't know what's happening in our country with freedom of speech right now. But these two have every right to criticize anything. The government, they can criticize America, they can criticize anything they want. That's what our Constitution grants us. We have the right to speak our minds. These two have never called for violence. They've never attacked anybody. They've never said anything like that, anything ridiculous like that. They criticize what they see as something wrong. They don't want to see young men going to war and dying for a foreign country. Now, both of them have made jokes about, obviously, their lack of attendance at the event that may or may not happen now at this point. But it just goes to show you, folks, who is behind all this? Who is saying that these two cannot come to this event now? Again, I have to laugh at this because, again, it's just so stupid in and of itself. Because they have made comments against a foreign nation, which we're joined at the hip now. I mean, they even want to join our military with the Israeli military, which, again, to me is treasonous and sedition in and of itself. But, again, this is just so out of touch with where our founding was. And again, if we're embracing the 250th anniversary, and you're going to say, well, you two, you said something we don't like, so you can't come to this event now. No, only the people that say exactly what I like, then you come to the event. Stupid in and of itself. Again, we can agree to disagree. But I support both these two to speak their mind. I do. I don't think they said anything out of character. I don't think they said anything promoting violence or hatred of any group of any people. I didn't hear any of that from either of them. And so we should all, as conservatives, be very much upset about this. This should not stand in America in 2026. Either we embrace the Constitution, we embrace the freedom of speech, or again, if we decide we're going to play, you said something I don't like, so you're not showing up. Anybody can do that to anything. Biden administration can do that. Obama administration can do that. The Trump administration can do that. So when we're up in arms because of maybe, for example, the Biden administration using the DOJ to target people who use their freedom of speech to maybe go against abortion. And they protest that, or maybe they pray in an abortion clinic. And the Biden administration says, no, you're not going to do that. You're not going to try to talk to women going in to get an abortion. You're not going to do that. We're going to arrest you. We're going to send the FBI after you, actually. That's how we're going to do this. I mean, this is the extent of the stupidity, folks. If it's wrong for something like that to happen, which I do believe it's wrong, so long as, of course, you're not assaulting anybody, of course, or damaging public property, or private property, rather, then why is what they're saying wrong? It's not wrong. They have every right to say it. They're red-blooded Americans. They have every right to say it. And again, I stand by them to do that, of course, and anyone else for that matter. So that's that. And by the way, just to compare this over to what's taking place with the NBA Finals, of course, which I never watch, by the way. I didn't even know who was playing until some woman on Instagram posted who was playing. I could care less, by the way. That's not the point about all this. But what is interesting about all this, I guess the Knicks lost last night, and people in New York City are not very happy. They're not very happy President Trump showed up to the event. In fact, many people are blaming President Trump for showing up to the game, which, again, is in and of itself stupid. If the president wants to go to a basketball game, he can go to a basketball game. And now people are saying, well, it's Trump's fault the Knicks lost. Well, it's probably their lack of skill that caused that to happen, I would have to say, at the wonderful Madison Square Garden, which I thought was for Nazi events, folks. Didn't you hear that? I thought it was just for Nazi events. Huh. So it seems like when Trump goes there to speak, it's a Nazi event. When anyone else goes, performs, does anything else, it's totally fine. Okay. Try that for logic. But now I guess this is a big deal because it's the first NBA final since 1999. Good for them. President Trump showed up. Okay. Lots of security. Lots of people were not happy with the security too, by the way. They were not happy. They had to go through TSA-like security to get into the event. No. Players alike. You get paid millions of dollars to dribble a basketball and entertain people. I think you go through security for 5 seconds, okay? But anyways, people are going after Trump. And by the way, a massive brawl ended up breaking out in the streets afterwards in Bryant Park. Officers were in riot gear, rushing to the scene in an attempt to control the fans, pepper spraying people and whatnot. Just ridiculousness. I saw one individual wearing a Spurs jersey being attacked by people. One guy had a street sign, I believe it was a traffic sign, hit somebody with it. I mean, it's just unbelievable behavior. It's so unbecoming of a society when you have people acting like that in the streets. But this is what happens when you don't hold people accountable. This is what happens when you have parents that don't discipline their children. or act as a proper example for the children, anything goes. And that's why you saw all these dunces in the streets fighting after a basketball game. Of all things, by the way. I wish people would get this riled up over our rights getting trampled, but when a basketball game doesn't go your way, you act like this in the streets? I saw this when I was living in Los Angeles. The Dodgers won, and people were in the streets acting like this. Defacing property, spray painting, fighting each other. I mean, so stupid. So incredibly stupid. I mean, this is just totally unbecoming. Should be acting like this in the streets, or at any time, really, for that matter. So I thought you'd all be interested in hearing all of that, but it seems like the Big Orange had a little bit of chaos going on in it last night. Yep, disorderly conduct and other individuals on charges of assaulting a police. There you go, assaulted police officer, you morons. Unbelievable. Anyways, let's move on. Let's move from the Big Orange to the great city of angels, Los Angeles. This comes from PJ Media. Spencer Pratt, the underdog in the LA mayoral race, now is completely in limbo now after being a solid second. Seems that he's fallen to third, and they're now calling it for Nithya Raman, who was so far behind she made a concession speech on election night in tears, by the way. By the way, no one knew who this woman was. No one knew who this one was at all until, of course, she lost the race and she conceded. Everyone go, oh, okay, she lost, okay. Nobody knew who the hell she was. Then she makes a comeback, gets a surge of 19%, I think it was 19% of the votes coming in. Something ridiculous like that after the election day was over. It's unbelievable. Now, I'm looking at the current results right now. Looks like Karen Bass has 34.3%, some 275,000, almost 276,000, just under that. Then this Nithya Raman, another ardent communist just like Karen Bass, has 229,576, and Spencer Pratt has 207,757 votes. And of course, you have the other candidates in the race. Again, no one really coming even close. The next person has 28,000. Again, nobody knows who these people are. Now, my point in saying all this to you right now, the point that is really important about this is the mail-in ballots. Election day means nothing anymore if you can just continue to bring in ballots, whatever you want, put the date of the election on there and say, hey, look, it was mailed in, so we can throw this into the pile too and count it. What needs to happen, there needs to be a U.S. Supreme Court decision, certainly about this. Is this justifiable? Is this legal that we just hand out a ballot to any person and pray to God they're the person that filled it out and mailed it in? Can you imagine that, though? Let's say you live with somebody. And you say, I'm not voting. Well, can I fill out your ballot for you? Oh, sure. I'll just sign your name to the bottom. I'll fill it out, everything for you. I mean, I guess maybe with consent, you could argue that's okay. I don't seem to think so. I think you should be there in person. Unless, of course, you request a mail-in ballot if you're out of state or you're abroad or you're stationed somewhere across the planet. Then you could do that. I think that's fine. And by the way, if you want to have multiple days up until election day where people go in and vote just to ensure that everybody has time to go vote so they're not racing on election day if they're working to go do that. Okay, if you want to open up a couple extra days so there's early voting, fine. I could care less. But we need to have election integrity laws, folks, and we're not seeing that right now. And when you see, for example, you have a ballot drop of, for instance, 25,000 votes coming in, and none of them went to Spencer Pratt? Something is out there when you're neck and neck. Well, he was about 3 to 4 points behind Karen Bass. And what took place was that you saw this big rush of votes coming in, and none of them went to Spencer Pratt. That mathematically, it doesn't make any sense. So I think we need to look at what's going on here. Where do these ballots come from? Again, nobody knows. They just show up, these election locations. I think it's time that the Supreme Court got in there and said, wait a minute, what's going on here? And I think it's even more time for the president to come in and say, we need to forensic audit these machines. We need to check these voter rolls. We need to have election integrity in this country. That'll do it for today's show, folks. Thank you for being here as always. Make sure you're staying prepped. I'll see you back here tomorrow for more groundbreaking news on the next Marco Dure Show. Until then, be good, stay busy, and God bless.